listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Cricket Podcast for a two-part extravaganza. Up front, we've got India v Australia as the Indians go 1-0 up, storming Perth, the Wacker, whatever it's called now, some sort of corporate sponsored name, I imagine. And then in part two, we're going to be going into the IPL. We've got, a huge reaction show planned to today's and yesterday's IPL mega auction. We've got Dan Weston joining us in about 15 minutes to go through that. We'll be talking big buys. We'll be talking big busts. We'll be talking, not that kind of bust, Ross. I can see you laughing. And we'll be talking, we'll be grading all the teams. I think that's what we'll do. Give them a mark out of 4 or 8, something like that. I'm Jack Hope. I'm joined by Ross Legg. How you doing, Ross?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you, mate. It's always nice to see Australia turned over, especially when they get absolutely thumped. So I'm looking forward to talking about that. And what is not to like about the IPL auction is all the razzmatazz that you kind of want out of this entertainment package. And we've had kind of some of the weirdest things happen, including a 13-year-old being auctioned off, which doesn't really pass the red face test of kind of corporate social responsibility. But who cares? India Premier League, baby. Let's get going.
Probably should have told you this before we started the pod, Ross, but you might want to double check that you are on the right microphone.
Okay.
TCP production standards remain, as ever, very high. Before we get going, just now you're muted. I don't know. Anyway, look, we're 1 minute 30 in. We've screwed up. We've probably got about another hour and a half of this to go. Let's hold on to our butts, people, because it could get wild. Before we get wild, though, let me tell you about Manscaped. Head over to manscaped.com. Use the code CricketPod for 20% off plus free shipping. You can get all of your male grooming equipment there. We've got Christmas coming up. We've got Thanksgiving coming up. We've got various other holidays and or birthdays for your loved ones in between. Head over to Manscaped. Use the code CricketPod for 20% off plus free shipping. Trimmed my beard yesterday, actually, Ross.
I'm going for the handlebars. Not quite working though.
I don't think it's too bad. I think it's better than some previous attempts, I reckon. In fact, if you were a listener or a viewer to the pod, if you head over to YouTube and had a look back through all the various Novembers, Ross, you do Movember pretty much every year, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah, it's very important.
I think you could see the development of Ross's moustache over the years, not just over the month. I think this might be your best effort yet, to be honest.
I'll take it. Yeah. I'll take it.
Ross, tell me what happened, if you don't mind, in the first test of the Border-Gavaskar Trophy.
Well, India went in with it, and I think it's fair to say they were without some key players. There were some injuries, there were some babies being born, and Australia were going in with one question around their opening batsman, with McSweeney coming in. And India pretty much were going with the approach that they used last time they were down under, where it was kind of like, oh, do you know what? Let's hamstring ourselves just a little bit, and then we'll probably win. And that's actually what turned out to happen here. It was a pretty crazy game overall. India won the toss, and then they were skittled for 150. And all over cricket Twitter, people were despairing. They were just like, this is a disgrace. We've just lost to New Zealand. Gautam Gambhir needs to leave. Like, what are we doing? And what they didn't take into consideration is that they've got Jasprit Bumrah. And on a pitch like the Perth put out to play, Bumrah destroyed them. I think it's pretty fair to say. Harshit Rana on debut as well, picking up 3. But they skittled Australia for 104. So taking a first innings lead when you get bowled out for 150 is a pretty impressive achievement. And then India reminded themselves that they are absolutely bosses when it comes to batting. Jaiswal showed everybody his class, 161, which I think is his lowest score when he's hit 100, which is something to be said. He just deals in big daddy centuries, Jaiswal.
Right, mate. Go on.
Virat Kohli rolls back the years. I mean, Kohli dropped a sitter in the first innings, and then from then on was kind of pretty much perfect throughout the whole game. But Virat Kohli showed that he loves playing in Australia. He hit 100, and Bumrah kind of called the lads in, right? And they declared with a lead of 525 or something along those lines. And a lot of the commentators was, oh, they should have batted even longer. They should have got a lead over 600. You never know what's going to happen. Australia were 3 down at close of play. So the experts that you pay Fox News for or whatever really do know their stuff. And there was kind of a bit of a procession, really. Travis Head offered a little bit of resistance, Mitch Marsh as well, but they were never going to get it close to over 500 runs, and they were eventually all out. And India won by 295 runs. It was an absolute shellacking. It was embarrassing for Australia. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, after T on day one, it couldn't have gone more right for India. Like there aren't any more things that could have gone right for India. They couldn't have played literally any better. Top order getting runs, lower order getting runs, wickets flowing.
Yeah, all of the bowlers picking up wickets, right?
Yeah, catches galore, some great catches. Really phenomenal win, I think. I mean, when a team gets battered like this, it's sometimes the reaction is that there's kind of an air of inevitability to this. I don't think that's the case here. I think this is it's a little bit of a stunning victory. I mean, like the possibility that India could win the test existed, right? But they won it by 295 runs. Australia didn't have a sniff. By the end of day one, Australia were in major trouble. What were they, 70 for 7 or something like that? And they couldn't arrest that. I mean, their only hope, really, looking back on it, was that they could somehow get another 100 or so runs and push back the tide slightly. But once India got on top, I mean, like they put their foot on the Australian throat and didn't let up. I mean, yeah, genuinely stunning. Who's your pick of the players?
Marnus Labuschagne, probably. He did really well in this whole match. What an absolute disaster class from Marnus Labuschagne. 2 off of 52 deliveries, and then sends out Pat Cummins because he's scared. He wants a night watchman. Cummins gets out after McSweeney gets LBW from Bumrah, and then Marnus Labuschagne proceeds pretty much to leave the ball and fall over. So it was a disastrous performance. And as Hannibal's just put in the chat, no run. And on this occasion, Marnus Labuschagne hit no runs. So it's very, very good to experience. But if I'm perfectly honest, Bumrah on this, he's captain. Well, obviously vice captain. Rohit Sharma's not around. Comes and does this, and Bumrah puts India on his back, right? When it comes to 150 runs being all out, he must be sitting there going, for goodness sake, guys, like, I know the pitch is doing bits and the ball is hooping around, but we've got to do better here. And we, being England, being English, comes to a position where we've seen England get skittled, and then it's a long test match for a travelling side when it can be in Australia. But here, absolutely perfect from all of them. So I think pick of my players has to be Jasprit Bumrah on this occasion. But Nitish Reddy, I thought, did himself plenty of favours, and then so did Harshit Rana on debut. So overall, a solid India performance by young and old.
I mean, absolutely. I think Bumrah again. I mean, like I think we were talking. Maybe after the New Zealand series, we were like looking at his numbers and saying if he can get another 100 or so wickets, he will go down as, arguably one of your pacers in an all-time cricket 11.
Yeah.
And he continues to make that case. I mean, this might be one of his best tests ever, I think. And I know there's like a slight caveat to this. I mean, I think on day one, the ball was seeming, and this is a little bit nerdy, 0.8 degrees off of straight, and anything over 0.5 basically means you can't bat. Like batting averages around the world go below 20, I think about 0.5. Like the speed that test match bowlers can bowl at. And my cat just attacked me, sorry, that really threw me. Like a cat just full on attacks me. The speed that test match bowlers can bowl at, and the fact that the deviation happens, means that effectively the bat isn't wide enough, and that's what you saw on day one. It was like something like 16 of the 17 wickets were a ball that nipped back in and pinned someone LBW, or a ball that nipped away and someone snicked off to one of the slips. So there were good bowling conditions, but still, as you say, Ross, India put 150 on the board. If they bowl if he bowls a few loose deliveries there, or his length isn't quite right, and Australia finished the day 100 for 3 or 100 for 4, which could definitely have happened, even with the ball moving around, even 100 for 5, then it really looks like a long way back for India. But I mean, by the end of the day, it looked like Australia didn't have an answer, and they certainly didn't have an answer when they came out the other night. You forgot when you were talking about Marnus, by the way, that he at one stage was sort of bowling bouncers, like pounds Anthony or Wagner.
Yeah, well, his average speed was higher than Hazelwood's, which he was kind of boastful. But when you lose by 295 runs, who gives a shit?
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else you want to pick up on this test? Where do Australia go next?
I think this same team. I think Australia don't typically panic on this front. McSweeney is, you can't base somebody, judge someone on one test match. So it's unlikely they will jettison him. I think questions need to probably be asked of George Bailey a little bit. Kind of gave David Warner a bit of a farewell test series. They could have been blooding in other youngsters, or at least other people who could actually open the batting for them. They then had the whole Steve Smith opening debacle. And when your job is to be a selector and make those calls, and they haven't gone particularly well, there is questions to be asked there, I think. But overall, I don't think Australia are going to change much. And they were probably just a bit complacent on this occasion, and they should know better than to underestimate India.
What does this mean for India? Are they now the favourites to win the Border-Gavaskar Trophy again down under?
I think anytime you go 1-0 up in a series is a good thing, right? I think it's much better for the series that India have won this first one anyway. We said could be 3-2 either which way, and I'm sticking to that at the moment. So I think it sets it up beautifully.
Cool. Ross, we've got lots of bits to get to. And people will probably rightly point out that we're skipping over a pretty famous test win here. But, that's what happens when you schedule an IPL auction for the same day as a marquee test series. We didn't do that. If it was us, we'd do the auction tomorrow.
I would have done it nearer Christmas. And we've got Dan Weston waiting in the lobby who'd be champing at the bit to get involved. So,
But yeah, it is what it is. We are going to take a really quick break, bring Dan in, and then continue our conversation, but on the topic of the IPL.
Woo.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Cricket Podcast, where we're going to be talking about the IPL. Here's what we're going to do for the rest of the show, and we'll welcome you in a second, Dan. Just want to do the show menu to begin things. We're going to start by looking at some of the big buys. We'll probably do the top 10, maybe not in loads of detail for all of them, but talk about some of the massive spending, some of the millionaires that have been made, or multi-millionaires that have been made thanks to this auction. Then we're going to go through each of the teams, give our grading A, B, C, or F. There's no D, there's no E, A, B, C, or F. They're the only available grades. And then right at the end, because I think this is quite an interesting part of the IPL auction, maybe we'll talk about some of the people who didn't sell. Lots of teams did not fill their overseas quota, so there'll be some big names who, I guess we'll be happy that the PSL overlaps with the IPL next year. Does that sound good to you? Dan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jack. Now we're on to the more important stuff after talking about the test match. I'm very pleased about that.
I'll get people going. Yeah. Cheers, Dan.
Good to be back. Been a hectic couple of days, obviously, with the auction. Been fun as always. It's like a Christmas for people like me. I'm here with some interesting takes. Maybe a few Fs as well.
Look forward to it, Dan.
I'm glad. We needed more Fs in our retention special. I don't think we were handing out enough Fs, so hopefully there'll be a few Fs to go around. Hopefully a few As as well. We want to reward good performance, and that there is nothing higher, I think, in the cricket world than praise from us. So
yeah, I think it's pretty fair. Yeah, and does the Fs kind of stand like what the F were you doing? That's why I'm taking it on that part.
Yeah,
there was some big what the F moments, wasn't there? So
there definitely were. Let's do the big buys. You can see it up on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. Our technology or our technological capability has gone through the roof, and there's actually
we're evolving. We're evolving at a rate.
Yeah. we've had this functionality for probably 3 years now, and this is the first time we've got round to. And I'm not lying. People listen to the podcast. Share screen mode. That's the quality. That's the quality of production you get here. The big names on the screen, boys: Rishabh Pant, Shreyas Iyer, Venkatesh Iyer. Let's start with Pant. I think he's an obvious one, or he's an easy one to do. He goes to 27 crore. It is the IPL record. It makes him the most expensive player. I think we kind of had an inkling that he'd at least be the most expensive player. Ross, are you surprised to see him go as high though?
No, I'm not actually. I generally, when in the preview show, I kind of said, I'll probably be the most expensive player. And yeah, I'm not surprised, right? He's one, captain material. We know there's a captaincy tax that comes onto everyone in the IPL. He's a left-handed batter who can bat anywhere in the top 6, and he can also wicket keep if they want him to. So, and he's obviously Indian, so that is, he's ticking a lot of boxes there. And LSG, I was a bit surprised to see him go to LSG, if I'm perfectly honest. But they threw the kitchen sink at him, at probably the detriment of some of their other squad building capability. But they've pulled off and got one of India's superstars. Whether he's a T20 superstar, we need to wait to see right in the IPL, but he's pretty bloody good anyway. So, not surprised to see that.
Dan, did I hear him right there? Did he say Rishabh Pant not an IPL T20 superstar? 27 crore seems like a lot for someone to get that judgment, doesn't it? Do you agree or disagree? Fair price for Pant or not?
No, I think it's overpriced. I'm reluctant to think that, apart from Jasprit Bumrah, that any player would be worth ballpark 25% of a team's overall playing budget for a season. But I can understand why they did it. I think he brings a lot more to the party than on-pitch performance, which, anyone who knows me or has listened to me talk before does not value that stuff particularly at all. But I think it's important to understand the part that might play in that valuation. Certainly, if you offer me the same money as for Pant or Iyer, obviously I take Pant, but I wouldn't pay 27-ish for either of them.
Yeah, I think that it leads nicely on to number 2 on the list, Shreyas Iyer, 26.75 crore. Now, if you ask me, Dan, you can have a good player or not a bad player, a good player or an average player, and they're both going to cost you 27 crore. I would take the good player. Not what Punjab chose to do. Can you try and get inside the mind of the Ponting Brains Trust and explain what went on there?
Well, I can't think of any kind of logical sense as to why they would want to pay that. Yes, clearly they wanted the captain. Clearly Ponting wanted to work with players that he's worked with before and knew. But my word, that is a hell of a premium to pay for something like that. I mean, I'd probably say just over half would be what I was expecting for that price for Shreyas.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to change my name to Iyer, and I reckon I've got a good chance of getting a good bid in the next auction now. Seriously, I just don't understand it. I mean, like, if you look at his numbers over, say, 5 years, and you teleported that to, say, the 100, he wouldn't even give you like a top bracket player. I think it's that straightforward, and I just don't see it. And I think that the key point you look at all of these three players and what they've done to their respective teams is that they have all constrained their team's ability to invest in players in other roles. And I think we'll probably go on to that at some point during the rest of the show.
Which was huge, right, for Punjab?
Yeah,
that was absolutely huge for them, right? Because purely on the fact that they could have built whatever they liked. They only retained 2 players. They could have done anything, and based upon all the bargains that we've seen on day 2, they've got a bit of a B team. If I'm perfect, they've still got some good players. Don't get me wrong, but they really could have thrown their weight around, and they could have absolutely fucked Delhi. Like the fact that They ended up being fucked themselves by Delhi, but it was that moment where everybody could see what was happening. Like the whole world watching the auction or following it on whenever they were following it on, were just like, oh, it's the bald bloke from Delhi. He's got the paddle up and he's literally playing the Punjab Kings like an absolute puppet. And he played it perfectly. He absolutely leveled the playing field for everybody else in the IPL, and Punjab fell right into that trap. If Punjab should have turned around and been like, oh no, they should have done the old double bluff. They were like, no, this was old Punjab, 25 crore. They should have got out, and Delhi would have been stuck there with Shreyas Iyer being like, oh no, what have we done? But instead, Punjab were exactly the same as they always are, comedy kings.
Yeah, I've got his stats up on the screen for people watching. 3,000 IPL runs, average of 32, strike rate of 127. If someone had given me that as a blind test over 116 matches, by the way, I'd have said Manish Pandey. That's the player
fair.
that would have.
Yeah.
That's the player that was sprung to mind. I mean, look, bonkers. I mean, like genuinely bonkers to me. If he'd gone for half that price, I'd have been like, maybe you overpaid. But fair play, mate. You get to take that to the bank. Hope he has a good season. Hope he justifies it. Third, we've got Venkatesh Iyer. Only 3 crore cheaper than Shreyas. And like Dan says, it was a great day to be one of the Iyer brothers. 23.75, the Kolkata Knight Riders returning to KKR. I didn't see this coming. I did not see this coming. Dan, I know you had a big list of players with price volatility, and you've been asking people for mock auction results to try and get an idea of what people might sell for. I don't remember specifically what Venkatesh was down for. I don't remember it starting with a 2, though, even at the upper end of the window that you were looking at.
Yeah, it didn't start with a 2. You're absolutely right. The upper end was 13.5, and the expected was broadly 10.5. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I didn't see this coming at all. I didn't even think at 10.5. I thought he might be a bit overpriced, to be honest with you. But there you have it.
And it was all
Ross,
driven out of KKR. All driven out of KKR wanting to retain their championship squad, right? They were just like, well, this is what we need to go and do. I think in terms of their retentions, they could look back and be just like, well, do you know what? We might have got that a little bit wrong. But Venki Iyer, I mean, they probably played it right in terms of releasing him in the first place, because there's no way he should go for 23.75 crore. But they ultimately, they don't want to break up a champion team. I think it was probably a mistake for this one. Like with Delhi versus Punjab Kings, this was a KKR versus RCB, and RCB had the big stack bully position, and they could have really got screwed over there. But on more than one occasion, RCB put their head in the tiger's mouth and somehow came out unscathed, even though they were doing their level best to be typical RCB.
And also, with Venki Iyer as well, for those Indian fans listening, watching, who weren't aware, he actually had a spell in English cricket in 50 over. Now, this 50 over comp in the summer is run concurrently at the same time as the 100 and it's basically what would be called a development comp. So it's full of second 11 players and players who didn't get picked for the 100. He played 5 matches, took 3 wickets at an average of 37 and an economy of over a run a ball in 50 over cricket, and played 5 matches with the bat, batted all 5, averaging 13 at a strike rate of 80. Now, that doesn't really make me feel confident that Venkatesh Iyer is going to thrive at the moment. And certainly not value for money at that price. That's for absolute sure. And probably also worth mentioning that he soon turns 30 as well. So let's see where he is in 3 years' time at the end of the cycle.
We should do that. Third on the list was Arshdeep Singh. He went for 18 crore back to the Punjab Kings. I think most of us saw that coming, to be honest, that the right to match would be exercised and that Arshdeep would return. Ross, I know you're a big fan of Arshdeep. Is 18 crore fair for a frontline bowler?
I think in this case he's a little bit of a rare talent. I think Dan, you talk about a 2-2 bowler. I think Arshdeep falls into that category, right? Can bowl 2 in the power play, 2 at the death, and left being a left armour is of benefit, I believe. And in this occasion, like it didn't surprise me that Punjab went for him. I was actually surprised that when it actually happened, he didn't go for a little bit more. Once he got up to that position, I thought other teams might have wanted to try and push Punjab to see what they were going to do for him, because I think he was the first player out, wasn't he, in the auction? So it was quite interesting to see. So, but I think a good pickup, and actually, for Punjab fans, they must have been going, "Oh, do you know what? We've started off right here." They could have retained him. It could have got away with doing that, but it is what it is. So yeah, I think as part of their domestic bowling contingent, yeah, he's a huge asset for this team. And when they were going in with it like 110 crore, like they got the flexibility to do this.
Yeah, I like Arshdeep, picks up wickets. Can be a little bit expensive, but I wonder if there's a little bit of a Punjab Kings tax on that in a team that didn't always take loads of wickets. And so if you have to bowl the death overs there, sometimes it can be tricky. Joining him was Yuzi Chahal, 18 crore as well, Dan. There's a bit of a bidding war for the services of Yuzi. 34 years old, leg spinner, maybe the best spinner, probably the best spinner available in the auction. My feeling, slightly overpriced, but I can kind of see why they went there with this one.
Very overpriced. The draw didn't help him last time in the mega auction, and he went for, I can't remember, broadly about 6 crore. But it was more preferable to him this time. And we saw a big increase. Ironically, given the fact that he's not in the national setup at the moment, and you would probably say that he is at best as good as what he was before the last mega auction, possibly on a slight decline. And in 3 years' time, when you're buying a player in the mega auction, you're not just buying them for now, you're buying them for retention rights as well over the 3-year cycle, because you can't get that much quality in a mini auction. You're certainly pressurized in that environment. So part of the player's price is the retention rights, like a composition of a certain percentage of the player's price is retention rights. I'm not sure it's that valuable for Chahal. I'm willing to be proven wrong, but I think this is extremely overpriced as well. And another really good example of Punjab Kings blowing their big stack advantage that they could have wielded, throughout the auction.
I think this is where from their perspective, I don't really mind them paying over the odds. The Shreyas Iyer thing, I think, is bonkers. But I think if they get Chahal, they deprive any other team of the opportunity of getting a quality leg spinner. There's quite a big drop off to Rahul Chahar, who's maybe the next best Indian leg spinner, which means that other teams are going to have to start thinking about going into the overseas market, which has got implications on their squad, etc. It also means you've got 8 bankable overs between Arshdeep and Chahal. I agree. I think it is overpriced, but I think if you're thinking about putting out a winning team for next year, I don't really know whether Punjab are thinking that. I don't really know if they're thinking. But if you are thinking about putting out a winning team for next year, I don't mind the gamble, paying 5 crore over the odds, maybe even a little bit less than that, to pick up a player who's pretty bankable. And the style of leg spin he bowls as well, which is sort of slow rippers, I don't know, I would guess lends itself slightly more to longevity versus some of the quicker leg spinners who rely maybe a bit more on that googly and the shoulder flexibility. Ross, we're going to do some speed runs now. So I just want quick thoughts on the next 5. Okay, go. Yeah, we'll have the point. Yeah.
Tripathi or Namandir, if you've got a choice between either one of those and a guarantee of Noor Ahmed, and a guarantee of Noor Ahmed, plus 5 crore saving versus Chahal and Josh Inglis, what are you taking?
Oh, I think that's quite close, to be honest. I think in terms of overall player quality, I think it's tight. And so with that in mind, as Dan's phone rings, I think you obviously factor in the 5 crore, but then the fact that Noor isn't overseas and that I don't know if I'd expect English to be part of a playing package,
Well,
if that makes sense.
Aaron
I
Hardy.
think,
Take
yeah.
Aaron Hardy. So because I had
I mean, look,
English
but here
in there.
we're bringing in Punjab's wider auction style, and that's going to come later in the show. So I think you're right, basically. But I think out of your whole budget, spending a lot on a player that is a little bit of a unicorn for this mega auction, I don't really hate that. I think it's sort of all right. Roth, we're going to do a speed run now.
Okay.
Josh Butler, 15 crore, 15.75 crore, good price, bad price, and why? One sentence. I'll do Dan next.
I think it's a good price. I think Josh Butler is, in my opinion, still in the top 5 T20 batters in the world. Slight injury problems this year, but Josh Butler is Josh Butler. I think Gujarat Titans have replaced Ridham and Saha with Josh Butler. That is an unbelievable upgrade in that space. So, I think this is very, very good early business from Gujarat Titans.
Dan, you get KL Rahul. He went for 14 crore to the Delhi Capitals. Potential captaincy candidate there. Good price, bad price.
Broadly an expected price. I think everyone is very, very Marmite around KL Rahul. I think that you need to pack him with hitters. Delhi have done that, but we'll go on to talk about Delhi. Okay.
Ross, Joffrey Archer, 12.5 crore.
He wasn't even in the auction until like yesterday, so it was mad to kind of see him there. But around that 12 mark seemed to be the one for the Pacers. This is obviously a risk. Joffrey Archer has had quite significant injury issues with his back and his elbow, but looks to be coming back to full pace. Here, I'm not really sure what was going on with England, of whether he was going to be allowed to play, not allowed to play, etc. But if Joffrey Archer is the one who was the one, say, a couple of years ago coming back into this, then I think it's an unsurprising amount for him. But I think there's too many variables that are pointing towards the negatives rather than the good ones on here. So I think slightly overpriced for Rajasthan Royals.
Dan, you get Trent Boult.
I think
12.5 crore. Go on.
I think a little bit risky in terms of the age curve, and we don't tend to see bowlers maintain their level as they get into their 30s and beyond, and I think that could be an issue. But I'm actually pretty, and we'll talk about Mumbai. Obviously, I think I'm pretty surprised that they've managed to cobble together what looks like a serviceable bowling lineup with their budget constraints, and he performs part of that.
And Roth, final one, complete the top 10. Josh Hazlewood, 12.5 crore to RCB, returning. Good price, bad price.
If I'm perfect, I was a little bit surprised to see Josh Hazlewood go for this much, and I think RCB almost needed to do it. They had the right to match option for Mohammad Siraj. They didn't take that, and whilst we probably talk about Mohammad Siraj a little bit later on, it was kind of like forced, I think, upon them. And he's played for RCB before. He's kind of a known quantity. But again, age profile pointing against Hazlewood, but he's still a pretty great player, right? So he's a T20 world champion with Australia, and can bowl. He's kind of what their modern day Glenn McGrath kind of is. He kind of bowl whenever he likes. So I think it's not a bad pickup, but they forced their own hand on that one.
Cool. Well, we're going to wrap up there. I think overall, I would say not a bad day to be on the slightly older side. If you're a cricketer, lots of teams paying for a little bit of reputation. I think when we come back, we're going to go through the teams, give them a grade A, B, C, or F. So make sure you stick with us for that. See you in 2.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Cricket Podcast, where we're going to run through the teams and their purchases at this year's mega auction. We're going to start with the Chennai Super Kings. They spent quite a lot of money on retentions, so weren't a huge mover until maybe a little bit later in the auction. Big purchases from their perspective: Noor Ahmed, 10 crore; Ravi Ashwin, 6. That's a 9.75 crore. And Devon Conway, flipping heck. I'm not
Bloody hell,
doing
are you
good
okay?
at reading.
Do we need to send an ambulance over? Are you having a stroke? Do we need to get you a...
It sounds like he's like rating a computer game when you're not allowed to have the real names of a player.
Yeah, Jack's in the Pro Evolution Soccer of the IPL, isn't
he? Devon Conway, he goes for 6.25 back to the Chennai Super Kings. There's a few other buys, and we'll maybe get into some of the lesser price blokes in a minute. As a package, though, Ross, what have they spent there? 25 crore on those blokes. They're the big ones. Good or bad business from a CSK point of view?
I think this was very typical CSK. I thought they were actually, again, you look at some of the teams and there's a complete scale of professionalism. CSK are definitely on the professional end. And I think actually they've put together a pretty good team yet again at a fair price. They've got a well-rounded team, one that takes full advantage of the cheap hawk as well, and then filled in some of the gaps of when they're playing away from home with kind of some relatively budget options, right? Sam Curran at 2.4 crore is probably the bargain of the IPL. Nathan Ellis is another fantastic pickup. And then I think Khalil Ahmed and Tripathi for both kind of domestic players, also very nice. So Noor Ahmed potentially could be a brilliant spinner. Played really well last year for Gujarat Titans. And then Ashwin, I think they overpaid for Ashwin, but they kind of know what they're going to get from him. And he's in the perfect age zone, isn't he, for a CSK player? So, I actually think they've done a pretty good job yet again. And Devon Conway at 6.25, I actually think is a really good pickup as well, considering how many teams need a good opening batsman who is also left-handed. So, I'm giving. Well, I'll reserve judgment until
reserve judgment. We'll get Dan to do the slightly more technical challenge, because what CSK sort of did was actually spread their budget reasonably widely. Like, a lot of players got a decent pickup, like a decent payday from Chennai Super Kings. When we have a look at some of the other teams, there'll be a bunch of guys who base price or sub 1 crore, whereas at Chennai Super Kings, I've not counted it up, but it looks to me, just taking a quick glance at the screen, there's sort of 18 guys getting at least 1 crore to play for Chennai Super Kings next year. We've got Sam Curran, Dan. He's in at 2.4. Ravindra, he's in at 4. Tripathi, 3.4. That looked like pretty good business. Nathan Ellis, 2 crore. Jamie Overton, finally getting a go in the IPL, 1.5 crore. And, of course, Vijay Shankar, 1.2 crore. Talk me through this strategy a little bit, Dan, and is it effective?
Yeah, I like it, actually. I think that, first of all, they're definitely the Ron Seal team of the auction in terms of doing exactly what they say on the tin. We know what we're going to get from a CSK. They're gonna create a squad that's strong and plays well at cheap hawk. They've got to have a lot of batting depth generally, and they managed to broadly achieve that again. I think they've got around 18 players who are you wouldn't be particularly worried about if they played in starting lineup. And I'm not sure you can say that about all of the teams. Well, I know you can't say that about all the teams. They picked up some bargains. Curran, Ellis, as others have said already. And even Jamie Overton now is bowling again is not a bad pair because he can power hit as a finisher as well. Anshul Kamboj was another player that everyone was tipped to be fighting for. They didn't really spend huge money on him either. So and Ravindra at 4, for example, again is cheaper than they paid for him in the mini auction. Tripathi was way below the price that I expected him to go at as well. And so basically from that perspective, they managed to spread their money really effectively, cover a lot of bases in terms of their depth chart in their squad, if they get injuries or unavailability. And I think that they're in pretty good shape actually right now.
Cool. Let's do a little grading then for the Chennai Super Kings. I think they did really well. I'm giving them an A. Ross, he's signalling an A. Is that an A, Ross, or is that a gang sign?
Yeah, it's a gang sign and an A.
Okay, cool. Yeah, double up. Yeah, keep everyone sweet. And Dan, what do you reckon?
It's very rare that I'll give an A, but I'm giving them an A this time.
That is big. That is big news. Unanimous A's for the Chennai Super Kings. Normally, we're a little bit cool on Chennai as a podcast, and we get criticism for that. But I don't know. You can think about that, Chennai fans. Unanimous praise. So you're almost certainly in for a terrible season, I would say. Let's do Delhi Capitals next, because it looks like we're going to go in alphabetical order here. My screen is taking a moment to load. Ross, who are the big pickups for Delhi?
Well, King Legend obviously got a nice payday. Mitchell Stark and Natarajan, the both left-hand pacers, and Fraser McGurk was on the big list, and Mukesh Kumar kind of rounding off kind of anything 7 and above. And with the bargains, I actually think Harry Brook at 6.25 isn't as bad as some people have said on Twitter. I think he's a guy with an awful lot of ceiling, I think is the term we typically use, and this got a high ceiling. And then some people like Mohit Sharma, etc., around him was also quite cheap. But Delhi have put together quite a hitting team at the top, but I've got questions over their depth. If you compare CSK next to Delhi Capitals, quite different approaches is the way I've seen this. If I was a Delhi fan, you've probably got 12, 13 players who you just like, right, we can back these guys to play if they stay fit. And there's some people there with some injury history, no other than Mitchell Stark, right? So, I think an interesting approach with a little bit of depth, but not as much as they possibly could have done.
Yeah, Dan, you get the slightly more challenging task next time, I think, of assessing the lower level purchases. Now, I said there was not like I said that CSK were paying a lot of people more than 1 crore. Delhi have got 10 or 11 guys out of their 23 who are not on big money. Let's put it that way. That doesn't necessarily mean they're bad. Have they picked up some good bargains here, or, as Ross is saying, are they relying on people staying fit in order to put out a good team?
No, I actually agree with Ross. I think that they really are sort of focusing on a sort of a 13-player core almost, and then having a load of bus dwellers. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to the players picked up, but I think it's just so much to ask for a player to come in having never played the IPL and then dominating in their first season. And I think this is a Delhi trait. If we're looking at how Delhi have operated in mega auctions before, they do a lot of scattergun bidding and don't really have like what I would call clear targets, and then also pick up a lot of players sort of below 1 crore or around that sort of price range, but just to make up the numbers kind of thing after they've spent a lot of money on some players earlier on. Now, I don't mind that so much, but when you have guys like Karan Nair, Mohit Sharma to some degree, who have a very, very constrained ceiling, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. If you want to do it on the 5 best young players in the auction, find the 5 next superstars. If you do it on, an Arshin Kulkarni, or you take a flyer on Andre Siddharth, who CSK picked up, who's been, very, very, very spoken very highly of by Ashwin, he plays for Tamil Nadu in domestic cricket, or you do it on you get Saika Shaw for no money, or an Umrah Malik, someone who's got like a lot of upside you could probably work with. I get it, like that's fine, but they didn't really do that, and they just got some sort of gap fillers. And I think Kamira is another good example of that. Someone who hasn't really done not a huge amount recently. It's now, and they've got a decision to make now in terms of, do they use the experience of Du Plessis with KL Rahul, which could be a slow starting combo, or do they go with the youth of Fraser McGurk and surround KL Rahul with these young hitters, which could be potentially really, really high volatility and high variance as an approach. Rizvi is an exciting player, and a lot of people are looking forward to seeing where he ended up. So Rizvi, but I think overall, you look at an 11 that they might create. Then you've got maybe Du Plessis, Ferreira, Rizvi, Mohit Sharma at a push. It's a 15-player squad, basically, probably, or not far off.
Right, let's squeeze one more in before the break, but we need our grades first of all. Delhi, A, B, C, or F. Ross, you can start this time.
I actually think this is one of the ones that's in good contention to be an F, if I'm perfectly honest. I really don't rate what they've done, but purely on the fact that I think they do have some star power in that space. I'm kind of leaning towards a C on this occasion, purely on the fact that I think they can put out a pretty competitive kind of 13, but that might not well win you the IPL. So a C for me.
Dan, any upgrade on a C or a downgrade?
It's between C or F for me. Primarily because also I'm worried about the paces, because Natarajan's currently injured and they spent over 10 crore on him. And Mitchell Stark's a broken fingernail away from being banned from playing by Cricket Australia because they won't want him to get injured again. So basically, it's spin to win for them. I would have liked, they didn't even maximise their overseas quota either. I'd like to see another overseas pacer brought in for sure. That didn't happen. I'm in a good mood, so I'll give them a C.
Only
Okay.
4 of the 10 teams actually got 8 overseas players, which surprised me.
I think that was down to the fact that overseas players a lot of the time put their reserve in pretty high, and at some point in the future might be worth talking about why that is, but actually it kind of does make logical sense.
Mm-hmm. I'll give them a C as well. The PSL is clashing with the IPL this year as well, isn't there? So if you think you're going to get a PSL gig for 200k, which lots of the players who have got high base prices probably do think they've got a chance at, why would you spend 3 months away from home when you could do a month and a half? Yeah. We've got a quick question in from Andy, which has come in over Dan's head on YouTube. Could you do Ravindra in the middle order? So this is going back to CSK. Could you do Ravindra middle order to complement Dubé? He'd be the pace hitter to go with Dubé's spin hitting. Sam Curran, Noor, and Patarana, the other overseas players. Tripathi could open with Gaikwad. Do you like how Andy's setting up his theoretical CSK side there, Dan, or not?
Yeah, no, I actually that's pretty much where I was at with my thinking. And actually, you could probably look to go with like a Gaikwad, Conway, Tripathi, Ravindra, Dubé, and be like have that as a top 5. And you'd be okay with that. You might have to then compromise and not pick a Sam Curran, but that's fine too. You've got options there, definitely. It's certainly a possibility.
We've had a request from Subod to do Mumbai Indians next, and we are nothing if not suckers for our audience. So let's do Mumbai Indians. I thought they were asleep for the first day. Didn't really get involved at all. I thought maybe the Delhi guy, he'd managed to bid up Ponting into wasting all his money. Maybe he'd slipped a Mickey to the Mumbai Indians table paddle guy, and he'd nodded off. In the end, they did wake up. Trent Bolt 12.5 crore, Chahar 9.25, Naman Deer right to match at 5.25, and then Will Jacks also picked up a 5.25. Then things tail off a little bit. Dan, we'll come to you first on this one. You made a comment earlier in the pod that despite coming into this auction with some severe budget constraints, thanks to their spending on the 5 guys they chose to retain, they've come out with a bowling attack that looks usable, and that could augur quite well for the Mumbai Indians, who already had Surya Kumar Yadav, Rohit, Tilak Varma, and Hardik as usable batters before even lifting the paddle. What do you reckon, looking at them now?
Yeah, that's usable. It's certainly an upgrade on their bowling attack from the last mega auction 2022. So we have to give them a little bit of credit for that. I think they went into the auction with 45. So it was and only really Bumrah as a viable bowling option, apart from some input from Hardik Pandya. But so it was always going to be difficult. I think we have to take that into context when judging their auction performance, although obviously they're in a situation of their own making. But if you look at like Hardik, Santner, Deepak Chahar, Gazanfar, Bumrah, Bolt, I mean that's not bad. That's pretty good. It's a bit light on death bowling apart from Bumrah. power play bowling, if Bolt and if Chahar is fit and playing well, that's taken care of. Spin's taken care of. You also got Jacks with a bit of off spin against left-hander heavy teams as well. Seems to work okay. I don't love it, but I think they've done okay. Maybe they'll use Robin Mintz at some way as well, and use one of the bowlers as an impact sub. They don't really have a lot of wicket keepers apart from him and Ryan Rickleton. I think they're Bevan John Jacobs, who they picked up right at the end from New Zealand. He can keep as well, which is a bit of a strange pickup. The last few overseas players that they picked up. So yeah, Mintz might do it. He got 36 off 12 today in the SMAT, so he might keep for them. So they've done okay. They've done okay.
Ross, their tactic seems to have been wait a little bit and then buy loads of overseas players at base price. They do pick up 8 overall, but they get Jacobs, Williams, Topley, Rickleton, Santner, all at base. And to be honest, Will Jacks not miles over. I think a few people thought he'd go for a little bit more than 5. How do you rate their strategy? Do you think they've been successful?
I think this is a potential championship winning team. I think in terms of the skill that they've got in this team now, it is miles better than what was on show last year. Like, it's such an upgrade in my view, and I think they've got the backups for them as well. Like if Trent Bolt ends up kind of getting injured, actually Reece Topley is kind of in there to make up kind of the left arm contingent. They've got much better spin options than they did before. They managed to. I thought they would at least pick up Donut Boy or Piyush Chawla for his base price, but they managed to refuse that, and they did leave a little bit of money on the table. So I thought that was a bit of an interesting decision from them. But I think overall, just with Bumrah and all the batting that they've got, I think they've done a really quite a good job here. So yeah, for me, Mumbai and CSK showing again who the professionals are in the room. But obviously, they also picked up Arjun Tendulkar. So it was nice to see the nepotism still alive and kicking at Mumbai.
Well, they're one domestic injury away from having to pick him in every game, I reckon. So that could be an interesting one.
Do you want to give a ranking? Dan, you can go first this time. A, B, C, or F for the Mumbai Indians?
I'm not as bullish as Ross about their chances in the tournament, but they came into the auction with significant constraints. I'm going to give them a B.
Ross?
Yeah, I think B's fair. I think is my part. So I think in terms of the depth question is there. They've got some good bits in there, but from a domestic bowling perspective, Dan's spot on as always. But the likes of Pandya can still make up for those parts, and they at least have kind of probably 24 overs, 26 overs actually on the field when it comes to bowling, which they just didn't have last year, right? They probably had 12 last year that they could actually bank. That is a considerable upgrade, but they still could have done things slightly better. But yeah, B/A for me is where they sit for me.
I'll go right. I'll give them an A, and I'll give them an A because of their work at the auction. I'm not sure it's an A squad. When we get a little bit closer to the IPL, we'll talk about that in a bit more detail. But I think they were in a difficult position thanks to their spending on retentions, and they've come out with a team where you think, yeah, I can see how that fits together. We've got one question, one super chat from Crick Process, who asks your thoughts on Mumbai's overseas scouting. They seem to invest and rely heavily on them. Also, Chahar is highly overpaid. So first of all, Ross, is that a fair price for Chahar? You can answer that one.
I think they were always going to be in a bidding contest, right, with CSK. Chahar can bat slightly, so you can fit in at number 8, number 9, and it kind of gives them a little bit more depth in that team. And it's got a pretty good record kind of up front. So yeah, I'm not surprised to see him go for that, especially when you look at some of the other domestic bowlers like Shami and Siraj and those guys going kind of a little bit above that. So yeah, it's within the ballpark that I kind of expected, but his injury record is awful, right, over the last kind of couple of years. So it is a bit of a risk.
And Dan, Mumbai's reliance on overseas scouting. Mumbai always get talked about as a super scout team. I'm not entirely sure about that personally. I think they've read the room from an auction point of view and seen that overseas players maybe not that highly sought after this year, and cleaned up basically on a load at base price, a load who probably could do a job if asked. What do you reckon of the overseas contingent? And to half do sub-odds question, which four would be your starting four?
Okay, starting for Jack, Santner, Gazanfar, Bolt. On a pace-heavy pitch, you might be able to look at top lane for Gazanfar or Santner. I don't see the other three really having a great impact. Rickleton, I like as a player, but I think it's a huge step up from what he's done to playing regularly and doing well in the IPL. Jacobs is an interesting one. He's barely played his New Zealand domestic cricket. He's only played like 9 games, I think, in T20. Is young. He is, there you go, 9. He's like a number 6, number 7, who, so he's very much a luxury player. You can see there he's only played 71 balls in 9 games. So you're looking at a match involvement of around 8 balls per match. So I think that's really the definition of a luxury player. Clearly one who can hit, and clearly one who can hit sixes, as we can see by those numbers. But I think, again, there's a lot of difference between that in New Zealand, probably playing at grounds which are about as big as my back garden, to going and playing in the IPL against really high quality bowling. And going back to Quick Process's question about their overseas scouting, if they invest and rely very heavily on them, they might want a refund if they think that Lizard Williams is the best option at that point in the auction as well.
Cool. We are going to take a quick break. Then we're going to come back and let's do Gujarat Titans. Then we'll do Rajasthan Royals because we had a request for them and Ross loves them. So, everyone's a winner. Back in a moment.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Cricket Podcast, where we're going through the IPL mega auction from 2025. We've done 3 teams. We've got 7 more. Given them a grade A to F. And we're about to do Gujarat Titans. Before we do that, just a quick reminder that we're sponsored by Manscaped. Head over to manscaped.com. Use the code CricketPod for 20% off plus free shipping. And, I don't know, shave all your hair off. Or your whole body.
Look, it works really well.
Yeah, the dome shaver, actual product you can get. Gujarat, they completed their quota. They got 25 players, only a little bit of money left in the tank. One of the teams that didn't fill their overseas slots. However, they did pick up Joss Buttler for 15.75 crore, Mohammed Shami for 12.25, Rabada for 10.75, Prasidh Krishna. I've done another one. Prasidh Krishna for 9.5.
She said Shami as well. There's Siraj. You're all over the bloody place. You're all over the place.
Siraj. I meant Siraj. Who were some big purchases, Ross? What do you reckon? Do you like?
Yeah, I actually thought they did a pretty good job here. I think they've gone down the route of let's pick people who we know are good at cricket. Let's not take too many risks on what we got. Krishna is a bit of a lottery bowler, but again, domestic wise, kind of I think completely serviceable and probably in the same ballpark as the likes of Avesh Khan and those guys who went for similar prices. Rabada at 10.75. He is a wicket taker. He can be expensive, but he's held the purple cap on a couple of different occasions, and I think they've put together what is a pretty good 11. I think there's a question mark on kind of who does the bit in between the openers and then the hitters of Tawatia, Rashid Khan, etc. Obviously, Lomraw and Sharat Khan are in there. I mean, Sharat Khan has been dog shit for quite a long time, but let's hope he has a good season. And then in terms of some of their other players, I think Sai Kishore at 2 crore is a brilliant pickup, bringing him back. And then, pardon?
Not for him, though.
Yeah, not for him. But we're organisation men, aren't we? We're firm men. We're the people going on that front. And yeah, they've got some decent backups, right? I think the likes of Kurtzia is decent enough. Rutherford's okay. Washington Sundar is serviceable if you're not going to play him every game. So I think it's a pretty good auction from GT for me.
Yeah, Ross, Dan, flipping it, but I think I maybe do need to go see a doctor. It's called Dan Ross. This is trouble. Dan, they were another one of the teams that seemed to play quite a lot in the 1 to 5 crore market, building out a squad of players, maybe 15 or 16 of them that could realistically expect decent game time over the year. Probably they didn't do it as successfully as Chennai Super Kings, but I think it looks all right. What are your comments?
I think that, I said yesterday on Twitter, I think they've low key created a pretty solid squad actually, and as you say, there's like maybe 15, 16, 17 players who like you wouldn't be disastrous if they were picked. You wouldn't think, oh, they're not capable of doing a job, because they are. And the problem is that I feel like they've maybe over invested in some particular skill sets, but have underinvested in others. So I have a particular worry about their middle order. So the top three kind of pick itself in Gill and then either Saisadashan or Butler, and vice versa. Then you've got guys like Mahapal Lomraj, Shafrain Rutherford, Shah Rukh Khan, Tawatia. I mean, that 4 to 7 doesn't scream strong to me. They might go a different way. They might pick a Kshagra, who had a good day today, I think, in the SMAT. Nishant Sindhu, who got unbeaten 100 today in the SMAT as well, albeit against a pretty weak Arunachal Pradesh team, who I'm sure, Jack, you'll be delighted to know about that. And then also Washington Sundar as well. How do you fit him in? How do you fit Saka Shaw in? How do you fit Kurtz in? Because you might need to use you can use an overseas spot on Butler, Rashid Khan, and probably with Rabada. But if you use the fourth overseas spot on a Phillips or a Rutherford, then you've got no space for Kurtz. So that's a bit of a strange one. I think they're okay, actually. I mean, we talk about the rule in the past from CSK where you work out how many wins they're going to get and double it. I reckon you can probably say with Gujarat, you work out how many wins they're getting, you times it by 1.5, and that's what I'm going to do for them. I seem to consistently play above the sum of their parts. I think they've done okay.
Yeah, I just had the Arunachal Pradesh score up. 255 plays 80. Last year, they're a little bit of a hobby of mine, following Arunachal Pradesh. They're my favourite SMAT team. Last year, they finished the tournament with a -7 net run rate, which is pretty incredible. Like that's an average of a 140 run deficit per game. Back to the Gujarat Titans. Ross, do you see any big weaknesses?
I'm actually quite bullish on these guys. I think they've done pretty well. I think the question is which Krishna is going to turn up and which Siraj is going to turn up, because they are both super inconsistent players from a domestic bowling perspective, and that is the only kind of worry, I think, for me. But if they can find form, and Nira's done a pretty good job at shaping this team, they will be difficult. And from a batting perspective, Joss Butler can bat long, Shubman Gill can bat long, and they can bat like explosively, right? And this team has got an awful lot of fireworks in kind of the last 15 overs, last 5 overs of their innings. So yeah, I think pretty good. And overall, I'm going to give them a B for what they've done here.
Okay, fair enough. Dan, out of A, B, C, and F.
They've got some weird signings, I'm not going to lie, but I think that they've done an okay job. They don't look bad, but they're very Gujarat, if that makes sense, in terms of like they're not really a team that I would pay to watch as a neutral supporter. They don't excite me. The Phillips pickup, as our cases in the chat, was decent. HL in the chat asks if Kareem Jannat is the weirdest overseas signing this year. Yeah, maybe one of them. I think that he's fighting with Lizard Williams and a couple of others for that as well. But overall, B.
Yeah, I'll join you boys, I think, on that one and give them a B. Ross, we're going to move to the Rajasthan Royals next. There were some interesting activities that went on with Rajasthan. You were very unhappy earlier on after their retentions. How happy are you now?
I think that they gave themselves a really bloody difficult job to do, and they've built an okay side. It's not something that is super exciting. Like compared to what they had before, it's definitely a worse team than what they had in the last 3 years. But it's not a complete and utter disaster. But a lot of it is hanging off whether Jofra Archer is actually going to be fit and firing. We've obviously got Deshastra and Tushar Deshpande lining up in this space. But I think the pickup of Hasaranga and Teek were really quite good. But in terms of depth, like from a pace bowling perspective, Faruqi in for Archer, is that actually the worst drop off in the world? I'm not sure it is. I think Faruqi's actually pretty good, and getting him at base price is a good decision. And then you've got the likes of Madball, the 13-year-old, which was just bonkers. The 13-year-old went for more money than Reece Topley and Bryden Cast for all our English fans listening to this, which is just mad to me. You literally have picked a child, and regardless of how good said child is, you're playing men's cricket. So a bit baffling. But Nitish Rana also, I think he could have done a good job at some of the other teams, so it was kind of a decent enough pickup, but a downgrade on where they could have been, and it was all self-inflicted, spending 14 crore on Jarrell and 11 on Hetmeyer.
Dan, they're left with 0.3 crore left. They only picked 20 players. So I think they actually could have bought another player, but decided that they didn't want to do that. Finished with 6 out of 8 overseas slots, including Mapaka, who, whilst I think probably a very promising talent, maybe isn't quite at the level you need, or isn't probably not quite a serviceable backup at IPL level yet. Surely, I'm going to ask you this. Surely they'd have been better off not picking the 13-year-old and not picking Mapaka and finding 3 semi-decent overseas players somewhere in the market that they can jettison next year if they want. Like, they don't have to keep them. I'm surprised by that. And also, they're normally a team, Rajasthan Royals, who are quite astute when it comes to player recruitment. Don't think they've had an amazing time this go round.
I don't get it. I don't see this at all as a good auction for Rajasthan. Don't get me wrong, they're still a team that I expect to be challenging for a top 4 position because they've retained really good players like Jaiswal and Sajid Samson and Rian Parak. But I didn't understand the Jarrell retention at the price. I didn't understand the Hetmeyer retention full stop. Archer is another one who's a broken fingernail away from getting needing a replacement for. They don't have a lot on the bench either. The 2 overseas, their overseas player and Siavanshi are very, very, very young and raw. I don't understand why you spend 1.1 CR on a 13-year-old when is actually constraining your ability to spend it on other overseas players, for example. And then they've had to compromise because they wanted to spend that. I just don't see it, because even if he's decent, he's not going to play. I'd be amazed if he played. And even if and we're not
child abuse.
We're not just even talking about this season. We're talking about 3 years in a cycle. He's still going to be 16 when it comes to retention before a mega auction, and the chances of him being retained is so low. I just don't even. I don't understand it. I genuinely don't. I think that, as Rickon says, that they're asking a lot on Sanjay Samson and Shashwat Jaiswal with their batting, so you can't write them off. But they're going to have to. There's a few players in this team now who are going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting.
Are they, Ross? This is a question for you. Are they going to have a separate changing room for the 13-year-old, or is, there's got to be some child protection rules here. He can't be in there while Hetmeyer's having a shower or something, surely.
Well, the issue, and it's been raised in the chat, and it also raised all over Twitter as well, is he actually 13? The age fudging conspiracy has very, very much come into this. So he could turn up. Yeah, he could turn up and have a full beard and just be like, "All right, lads, how's it going?" So who knows? But at the moment, Rajasthan are going to end up losing money. And generally, for what benefit? As Dan says, at the next mega auction, he's going to be 16. There was people saying, "Oh well, they picked up Yicewell at kind of 17." So yeah, that's completely different. Like, can you remember when you were 13 years old compared to when you were like 17, 18? A completely different person. So I'm pretty staggered of what they've done there. And if you then take into consideration like the Mafaka and buying the child, you could have got Nathan Ellis for that. Right, and then immediately that's what, or you could have got another batter at a decent base price that would have actually helped your top order out. They have not replaced Josh Buttler even slightly in this lineup.
I mean, they could have not picked any of the people they picked at base price and got Michael Pepper. He was 0.5. I don't think he sold.
Yeah, Matthew Short, right? There's opening batsman offers a bit of spin. Like there's loads of different options that they could have done. I think this, as a Rajasthan Royals fan, I think this is a fucking disaster.
Okay, F, is that an F?
That is a complete F for me. I think it's awful.
F for me as well. Lots of rookie errors. Dan,
their team's not an F, but their auction was an F.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think that's the bit they were going with, right? I'm really looking forward to seeing Teek and Hasaranga bowl together. Looking forward to seeing Jofra Archer back in the pink for the team, but it really underwhelmed, if I'm perfectly honest. And again, all completely self-inflicted.
If Jofra Archer is back to full steam, he could kill that child in the nets like that. That can't be allowed. Anyway, less safeguarding, more cricket, I reckon. Let's do KKR. We've had another request from Wayne on this one. 23 crore on Venki Iyer. We're probably going to have to get to that at some point again. Next biggest purchase was Anrik Nortje for 6.5. Then they were playing in the sort of small market. A couple of notable pickups. Quinton de Kock. He's not too bad, is he? Raghavanshi returns 3 crore. He made some waves last year. And Spencer Johnson as well. Decent Aussie bowler. Came in at 3 crore. Dan, it was a little bit like doing an auction with one hand tied behind your back once the Venki Iyer incident had happened. How do you think they came out?
Venki Gate.
Venki Gate.
Incident. I like that. Yeah. Well, they might be have one hand tied behind their back, but that's solely of their own choice. Venkatesh Iyer going for that money is a major mistake, and has had an impact on some of their other squad. They've tried to get the band back together again, which I can kind of understand, but effectively what they've done is that they've now got no real number 3 unless they want to play a Pandey or a Rahane, and they've traded out Phil Salt, Mitchell Stark, Anrik Nortje, and Quinton de Kock, which doesn't scream upgrade to me. It certainly doesn't scream upgrade to me. It's a downgrade, and that's all because they wanted to spend 23 crore on Venki Iyer.
Yeah. It's slightly confusing. Ross, can you answer this one? And we've had a question in the chat from Swami. Who's going to captain this mob?
Well, if you spend that much, it's probably going to be Iyer. Probably in that space. Maybe there's a captaincy tax that they threw into that space. It is going to be pretty interesting to see who they choose. I don't think you can give it to Rinku Singh. Varun Chakravarti, I don't think is really captaincy material. Narayan is not going to be a captain. They could give it to Dre Russ for a year, but again, fitness questions are on that. It's not going to be Nortje. Harshit Rana's too green. Ramandeep Singh, kind of new on the block, but with a bit of experience. And they're highly unlikely to give it to people who are just joining the franchise, right? In kind of De Kock, Spencer Johnson, Moeen Ali. So it's a big question, but it's got to be one of the people who've played before. So I could imagine it's going to go to Venki Iyer for them to spend that much.
Fair enough. Dan, probably a harder one for you. You've mentioned the number 3 situation. Are there some other barriers to them putting a decent team out, particularly on the bowling side?
Yeah, I think that if you're looking at their depth, of their bowling depth would be a problem for me. So you might have to look at getting 4 overs on a regular basis out of Andre Russell, which I don't think is a preferential position to be in. They're probably, again, 1 injury away from being in a bit of trouble. The 5th and 6th bowler is a big problem to me.
Yeah. You never know. They might get lucky. Maybe Imran Malik is back. I think him as a gamble at 0.75. I like that. I think that's good business. Yeah. If that comes off, you've probably got a 10 crore player based on the price of some of the other domestic players. And even if it doesn't fully come off, he could be a 5 crore player. Worst case, he sits on the bench all year running drinks. And,
there's also that part, like if there is mismanagement and a player has been mismanaged and it's been at Punjab Kings or SRH, it's more than likely the franchise's fault, not the player's fault, in my view. So there is that part. I've got every faith that Umar Malik will be a weapon for KKR, and I actually think it's a good pickup. And despite all of the Venki Iyer money being spent, I actually think they ended up with a decent enough squad. Mitchell Stark is on the wane, I think, as a T20 player. And is he really a good T20 player in general? I think Spencer Johnson is coming into it and has proven that he can play at the highest level and do a pretty good job. So I think that's not a bad replacement in that space. Dan, spot on about Phil Salt being a downgrade. Quinton de Kock being a downgrade on Phil Salt, but it's not absolutely terminal kind of in that space. But this is an aging team. They had the opportunity to kind of breathe some fresh life into it, and I'm not really sure they did that. And we're probably going to see the likes of Manish Pandey and Rahane having to bat for this team, which is unexpected when they are in that position.
Cool. Let's do some quick grades then. Dan, you can go first.
Again, it's a bit of a difference between. It's like Rajasthan. It's not a bad team, but I think it's a pretty mediocre auction. I'm gonna go with a C just because I'm being really generous.
I am gonna join you on a C. The Venki Iyer incident, I think is. You know what? I'm gonna give it an F for that. I think it's an F for that. I think that there's definitely a much better team they could have got there, and I think it's shooting both your feet off for extremely marginal gain. Ross, who are you going to side with, me or Dan?
No, I like some of the players that they have picked up. So I think actually they haven't done a completely. They did a good recovery job, is my view. So it's going to be a C for that. But the Venki thing, like again with Punjab, when we talk about them, they had the opportunity to really build a really strong team, and they missed the opportunity to make it even better than it was last year.
Right. If you're in the chat, make sure you tell us who you want us to do next, because we're about to choose. Before we do, though, we're going to take a really quick break.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Cricket Podcast. And Akil, it's your lucky day. We're doing RCB. Thank you for the request. Maybe, I don't know, it's quite hard to become a request podcast on cricket, isn't it? But this is our opportunity. Dial in.
We're really changing. Request podcast, you've got screen share going. Next level entertainment.
Royal Challengers, Bengaluru. They're always fun. They're probably more fun in the auction scenario than they are on the pitch. And they're pretty good fun on the pitch, to be honest. You never really know what's going to happen when RCB take to the field. Big purchases: Hazelwood 12.5, Sol 11.5, Sharma, Jitesh 11, Bhuvi Kumar, 10.75. Liam Livingston, 8.75. Some meaty buys there. And they still managed to find money later on in the auction to, I think, fill some gaps on the bench. Dan, anyone take your eye from an RCB perspective?
Look, I'm actually kind of pretty bullish on RCB's auction activity. I think I'm actually quite a bit more positive about their auction than a lot of other people are. I'm more positive than I have been on their auction for several years. Reason being because they swerved all of the traps early doors, more either by luck than judgment, just missing out on a 23 crore Lancashire themselves, and then managed to kind of get Salt and Livingston for pretty much the same amount of money. Well, actually, less money. Salt, Livingston, and Krunal Pandya for basically the same money as Venkatesh Iyer, which I think is a good illustration of where the value lied. I think they've done some other really good work in terms of swerving Kale Rahul, who I think would have been a terrible fit for RCB with Kohli and eventually Padikkal in the same team playing at the Chinnaswamy. I think that would be a real disaster in terms of slow starts and also the ability to construct a good bowling attack because they spent too much on batting. I really like some of their young players that they've recruited. Jacob Bethel, who I've worked at for several years with Birmingham Phoenix. So for just to give anyone who hasn't seen Beth play some insight in him, he's kicked on hugely in the last year, now playing for England. And he's already potentially play as a middle order batter. A lot of power despite not being the biggest guy. Left-handed and very good at both rotating the strike and scoring boundaries. He's also proposed some pretty serviceable left-arm spin, although I think that it's pretty fair to say that with Krunal Pandya in the RCB setup, he might not bowl that much. And is an electric fielder, I would say, possibly the top one in England for fielding. So I think that's a really, really, really exciting package for RCB at a pretty economical price. And obviously, if you're looking at sort of the way that they've constructed their overseas picks, so you've got Livingston and Bethel play together for Birmingham Phoenix. Livingston and Salt play together for Lancashire. Tim David has also played for Lancashire. Tim David knows Josh Hazlewood. So there's kind of like these connections between a lot of their overseas players to get them very, very instantly comfortable in an environment. And whether that's by luck or judgment, I don't know. But I do like that. I also like the Rasik Salam Dar pick. 6 crores a bit meaty from that for him. I don't think they were tested with the right to match. But they've got him, like I say, Bethel, they've got Suyash Sharma. They managed to get Manoj Bandaje about despite not picking him before. I think they've done a pretty good job. I'm not quite sure about some of their overseas backups, just Shah and Romari Shepherd, but Shepherd is like the Andy Flower type player. He loves bowlers who bat. So that's understandable as well. Bhuvi Kumar, can we get another 3 years out of him? Possibly. Hazlewood a little bit overpriced. Jitesh a little bit overpriced. But I think overall, pretty good work.
Roth, anything you'd add? I think Dan did the whole team there. You've got to challenge.
I'm going to put this out there. I think this is the best auction RCB have ever had.
Oh, huge. Here's a question then. Who's captain?
Well, it was Faf du Plessis last year, was it?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, there's only one person that can go back to, right? It's got to be Kohli. I think this has got, and Ricken was probably going to go mental in the chat, but I reckon this is going to be a Virat Kohli captain, and then literally this is going to be an absolute assault on the IPL title. I think this is a good team they've put together, and if I was a RCB fan, I'd be feeling very, very excited by it. The question that I do have is just that probably just the glue at the top of the order. So Virat Kohli's got to have a very, very good season, and then they got Padikkal in, which was a surprise, and it was a surprise to see him go unsold first and foremost because the lack of domestic batters is always an issue. But they've got him, Patidar, those guys, and I don't think they're drastically different in that space. So if they can get some good returns out of that, I think is important, because Jitish Sharma, on some of the 11s that I've been seeing on Twitter, I'm not sure he can bat at number 4, as some people were asking him to. So I think there's so.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's grade them then. How was the auction? I'm quite torn on this one. I could go really high. I'm probably going to hedge my bets slightly and go for a B. I think there's a few players here that I'm not absolutely sure are out and out bankers from a few different angles, form wise and injury wise. So I'm going to go B. Ross.
I think it has to be an A for me. The only bit that could potentially knock them down to a B was their right to match strategy, which I think was all over the fucking place.
Dan, A or B, or C or F.
High B, low A. I don't know if it has to be whole numbers.
It has to be whole numbers.
I'm gonna go with a B, but I'm pretty. If I was an RCB fan, I'd be pretty happy.
Should we do Sunrisers?
Oh,
yes. Should do Sunrisers. Yeah. They went into the auction. They spent quite a lot on retentions, particularly on overseas retentions. So I think we kind of had a pretty clear idea about where they may need to spend their money this time round. And I think they more or less followed the plan that I kind of expected them to follow. Ishan Kishan, the biggest purchase, 11.25 crore. Mohammad Shami, 10 crore. And Harshal Patel, 8 crore. 3 big Indian purchases to sort of bulk out the sparse-looking domestic cupboard. Ross, where else did you think they did well or badly?
Well, I'm going to put it out. I thought Kishan was a big surprise for SRH. Them buying him, it was that really wasn't in the tea leaves for me. And I think in terms of their kind of overall depth, actually, I think they're not as good as they were last year. But Nitish Reddy is obviously looking even better as a player. Rahul, in the spin department, they're probably going to have to try and fit in Zampa. Rahul Chahar has not been as good as I think people think he is for the last kind of couple of years. And then from a domestic bowling perspective, I'm not super excited by the lineup, if I'm perfectly honest. I think Shami has been kind of injured for quite a while now. Hair transplant or not, there's a big question kind of underneath him. Harshal Patel does take wickets, but he's unbelievably expensive. But they do have then some of the best batters in the world, in Travis Head and Klaasen. So yeah, I think it's a very mixed bag for them in terms of performance of the auction.
Dan, Ross has pulled up their domestic bowling as a bit of a problem there, which confuses me because they managed to get Unadkat back at base price. What are your thoughts on their bowling?
You know what? I'm actually okay with it. Like, they went into the auction with 45 crore. I think it was really difficult to avoid going into the auction with 45 crore because they wanted to keep the crux of the squad that did so well for them last season. I'm actually amazed that they've got a serviceable bowling lineup here with Cummins, obviously there originally, but then they've managed to spend broadly 18 crore on Harshal and Shami, 20 if you include Zampa as well, and Rahul Chahar. Maybe it's might be hard to put both of them in the same team together, but you know what? That's not too bad. I've only got overs from Nitish Kumar already. You've got overs from Abhishek Sharma. Plus, you got the impact sub potential as well. I actually don't mind it at all. What my concern would be more is, I think that the first 11 is really, really quite nice. And if you can put a batter as an impact, domestic batter as an impact sub, maybe like an Atava Taide as an impact sub, it negates the problem of Cummins at 7 and Harshal at 8 kind of thing. For me, the biggest problem for me is the lack of backup, which is always going to be the case if they were going to have a really strong first 11. I'm not sold on their overseas backups at all. I think Cast will go for plenty if he bowls in the IPL. And I don't No, I think the two Sri Lankans who, I guess that's the Muratharan connection with picking up those two players, Ishan Malinga, a very young pacer, Kamindu Mendes, the batter. I think it's really hard to see either of them fitting into this team, but we'll see. The backups are a bit of a problem. We're not that far off having to play in Adkat or Simajit Singh. They haven't got 18 that I would trust, put it that way. 13, 14,
Fair.
maybe.
Let's do some.
If they didn't pick up Kishan, I think it was the
go.
Kishan part, wasn't it? I think that was the turning point. I think they could have put together a better bowling lineup. They didn't need Kishan, I don't think. But
well, look, I don't mind it because actually they've managed to create a really strong starting 11.
yeah.
But they're going to have to ride their luck with injuries and availability.
I don't mind Kishan either. Wicket keeper, left-handed, reasonably
He's
flexible.
a good player, but it was that part of going. They only had a limited amount, and then they were just like, no, we've got this opportunity, and they took it. So let's see if they are going to kind of buck the trend and do that way. So not bad.
Dan, rating from you first, please.
I think they did as well as they could have done. Actually, I'm close to giving them an A. Their bench is weak, but they had no choice but to take this approach. I think they've done better than I thought they would with the budget that they had.
Ross, you're going to put your money where your mouth is. Give them an F.
I don't think that's what my mouth was saying, was it? I think this is. I think overall they've done an okay job. So I think B/C for me. So
Cool.
yeah, I think overall, look at it. This is going to be a fun team to follow. I think that's the part of that. So yeah, so I'm going to be a B for me, purely on the exciting scale.
I will go for a B as well, and I will move us on to the Punjab Kings because we've had a request for
F. See you later,
big boys. So they came into the auction with their highest retention being Shashank Singh at 5.5. So we knew they were going to be splashing the cash, and they didn't disappoint us. Shreyas Iyer, we've already talked about him, nearly 27 crore. Arshdeep and Chahal, 18 crore apiece. Stoinis, 11 crore. Yes, that's correct. Stoinis, 11 crore. Well done, Marcus. That's a nice retirement fund for him. And Marco Janssen, 7 crore, being the big moves. They also got a couple of little steals in there, so that we did slate them, and I think rightly for Shreyas Iyer. Glenn Maxwell at 4.2. I can get on board with that. Omasai 2.4. Don't really mind that. Dan, do the bargains that they picked up offset the catastrophic spend on Shreyas Iyer straight up?
I don't think so, because I think apart from Maxwell, I think it's really quite tough to fit them into the squad. Look, they have got somehow 18 to 20 functional players, but whether you can cobble them into an 11 easily, I think is pretty tricky. I think they look very weak in terms of their depth for opening the batting. Josh Inglis looks like the only realistic option to join Prab at the top, and I don't mind that. But I mean, there's no other options. It's almost like they're just recruited for players rather than actually recruited for roles. Shreyas Iyer, as I think everyone would agree, apart from Shreyas Iyer himself, is very, very overpriced and seriously constrained their ability to create a balanced squad. Arshdeep was always going to come back, and I think we covered that. Chahal, I think, is overpriced, but yeah, they might. They don't inspire me at all. I think there's a lot that can go wrong. There's some things that can go right. I think that we see a clear bias with Ponting picking 5 Aussies as well, which I think is an interesting one. I don't really see though how like a Bartlett or a Hart. I like Bartlett. I think he's very good, but I don't see how him or Hardy get into the squad. I think it's a stretch to even think that Omarzai will get in the squad unless Stoinis gets injured. They've got some decent backup in terms of the pace bowling, Yash Thakur, Vijay Kumar Vaishak, Kuldeep Sen. So that's kind of ticked off as well. I don't hate it in the end, but they could have done so much of a better job. I mean, I would love for someone to put me on an auction table on my own and with 110.5 crore and say, go and construct an amazing squad. And I would back myself to create a far better squad than Punjab have done.
Ross, could you do it?
Oh, no, not a shadow of a doubt. I mean, immediately I would have spent 30 crore on Shreyas Iyer. So what a brilliant pickup. The fact they were in the bid for that you could have got Pant, and I'm not saying Pant was the best bit of business going, but they picked an anchor and they spent all of that money on an anchor. And I'm just a bit just like, why did you bother? Like, you could have literally gone away and like some of the people that we've spoken about, like you could easily have picked up a much better attacking lineup. And it's just a very, very like it's just so expected of this franchise. Like it must be so painful being a Punjab Kings fan. But they still have got some okay players. But it's I think this is an F for me. All of that opportunity. And they took that opportunity away. What, fourth player of the auction? I think Shreyas came out. Was it fourth? He came out. Yeah, like absolutely fucking bonkers. And yeah, as you say, like who is their 11? That's a real challenge. So yeah, Ponting's gonna have to work some magic. But yeah, Ponting, in my opinion, is a good commentator, bad franchise coach.
Normally with Punjab, they play about 23 of the 25 blokes. So we'll get a good look at all these people. That's an upside. Let's give them a rating.
I've got one question. I do have one question for Dan.
Go on.
Ira, is he good? Is he any good?
Yeah, I think he got 100 actually in SMAT. So yeah, he could be a player to watch it for sure.
Yeah, bit of a bidding war for him. So look, there is some exciting players in this lineup, but last time Glenn Maxwell played for Punjab, he averaged less than 10. So let's manage some expectations.
To be fair, let's with Maxwell, I think it's very fair to point out if you read his book extracts on Quick Info, there was a bit of an issue with the coach at that point in time. I think with fresh management.
Oh, really? Okay, I'm not seeing the extracts from his book, but yeah, always good to release a book and then go back to that franchise.
Well, they didn't pick up Krishnappa Gautam despite his comments about the franchise. That would have been double whammy.
Let's have a ranking. I'm going to go with a C, I think. Ross?
There's an F for me. They threw away the opportunity of a lifetime here.
Dan?
I'm gonna, in terms of like what they've cobbled together, I'm gonna give them a C, but I want to give them an F. So the head says a C and the heart says an F because I'm absolutely heartbroken at how they've spent 110 crore and had this amazing opportunity to build a franchise from the ground up, and I think they've butchered it.
Well, yeah, they get another chance in 3 years' time. Let's finish off then with the Lucknow Super Giants. I think that's the last team. If we've missed anyone, let us know in the chat. They were the ones that won the Pant raffle, 27 crore. They went really high with their right to match. So for people who weren't watching live, Delhi obviously weren't bidding for him, and Lucknow won at a price that seemed pretty good in the low 20s. Delhi exercised the right to match, and I think Lucknow overbid by 6 crore. Now, I would have been surprised if Delhi had exercised the right to match, even if they'd gone like 1 crore over. I think Delhi were just doing it for the optics of not wanting to look like they'd let Rishabh Pant go free. They went high. He went for 27. Yeah, it's not bad, is it? It's Rishabh Pant. Did mean they were a little bit tight. Although things got a little bit tight for them. Their next biggest spend was Avesh Khan, 9.75, and then Akash Deep at 8. Glenn Miller, highest overseas. Glenn Miller.
David Miller.
David Miller. No, the mysteriously disappeared big band conductor Glenn Miller resurfaces for 7.5 crore. He'll be back in the middle order next year. Um, 7.5 draw, and that was their sort of big business done. Ross, Lucknow, they were the boring team last year, and Lucknow going to be the boring team this year.
Again, it's kind of like they've got a bunch of decent players, but it's not too brilliant. But at the same time, after the Pant thing, I was kind of in for it. I was just like, if you've got a plan in your head and you're going to throw the kitchen sink at something, in for a penny, in for a pound, I do think that they're probably going to have to shift a couple of people around when it comes to a batting position. Could Pant end up being kind of an opener for them? Because I'm not entirely sure who is going to be doing it, right? Puran, not really an opening batsman. David Miller, you're not going to open with him. Badoni and Samad, you're not going to do it. And then from what are you going to do? End up playing Markram as one of your overseas players, but that obviously then limits you in some other areas. So it's a bit of an interesting one. But they've almost forgotten you need to take full advantage of the power play, and then bowling wise, like Avish Khan, Akash Deep, they've kind of got a budget Indian bowling lineup. So yeah, it's not a complete disaster, but it's, again, I think they are just a boring franchise.
Dan, are you bored?
I want to wind back to 2019 when it was the first ever 100 drafts in November as well, about 5 years ago. And we were at Birmingham Phoenix. We had a really bad draft draw, and every wicketkeeper we were trying to buy was picked about 3 picks before us, or 2 picks before us, or the pick before us, and it was just so frustrating. And so we waited till really late in the draft to pick a wicketkeeper up. And I remember Nasser Hussain saying on the commentary, "Have Birmingham forgot to sign a wicketkeeper?" Well, no, we hadn't. We had all sorts of decision trees and depth charts and stuff, but he thought it was entertaining to think that we'd forgotten to sign a wicketkeeper. But I definitely think, going back to the relevance of why I'm saying this, I think Lucknow forgot to sign openers. Actually, who is their openers? So right at the end, they signed Matthew Bretsky, who's a South African overseas player who does open. I thought it was a bit of a weird signing, and then I found out who his agent was, and then I realised that actually that kind of makes sense now. I put on Twitter, who are Lucknow going to open? They really need to buy some openers. And I've got an avalanche of replies saying Mitch Marsh is going to open for them, which is an interesting one in itself. Just blows my mind. How can you have the opportunity to spend 120 crore and have 25 players in your squad, and you don't buy 2 overseas players, and you don't buy an opener?
It's weird. Give them that. I'll give them that. I don't know if it'll be good. I don't know if it'll be good.
This makes Punjab's auction look amazing.
I quite rated when they got Pant. I thought, they spent a lot of money here, but they had to replace a captain, a wicketkeeper, and they've added a left-handed player who's younger and better with the KL Rahul for Pant, and obviously money swap. I didn't really hate that. Pant and Puran, yeah, I can see those two being quite good fun to follow through an IPL. Mayank Yadav, who knows whether he will hold together, but if he plays 10 games, that's a huge win for them, and he'll be really effective in them. And then Bishnoi, I was like, looking at it at that point, I was like, this could be going places, and I kind of agree. I think David Miller might have been the next buy. As soon as they sort of, as soon as they did that, I was like, it was just luck. They didn't have a strategy. They weren't thinking, let's splash out on Pant and then we'll fill in the gaps.
I could have got Will Jacks. In the auction. Will Jacks went for
went straight
2 crore less than David Miller.
Yeah.
Should have got Prithvi
there's quite a few players.
Yeah, Prithvi Shaw left unsold in the auction.
Yeah, strange. I'm probably going to go with an F, boys. Didn't think they were very good. Ross, is there anything redeeming? Would you go up to a C or a B?
So if I still think they've got a decent team here. I still think there's potential in it. Lucknow are awful to watch. Their pitch that they play on is an abomination. But I think they've at least I think they've at least got a squad here that, I think it's slightly.
I don't even think they picked it. I don't even think they picked a team for their home ground either. I mean, I'm not. I'd kind of understand it if they'd gone in for some of the kind of. I don't think they're particularly exciting to watch. Boring finger spinner kind of guys, and look to really control and dominate teams at home. But I'm not actually looking at that team and thinking.
They kind of all look like B team or C team
do.
players. Do you know what I mean? Like Puran is kind of the standout person in this side. As you say, Yadav is very injury prone. Bishnoi is a good player, but not the greatest India spinner. I don't want to give them an F because I want Punjab to stand out getting an F, but it is really difficult. So, yeah, all right. I'll join you on the F train. LSG, F.
Dan.
Right. They are going to have 4 players doing the most ridiculous heavy lifting that they can possibly wish to do. They need 500 runs at 150 strike rate seasons from both Pant and Puran to have a chance of qualification. They need Avesh Khan to bowl as well as he's done in his career, which is not impossible, but, tricky. And they need Mayank Yadav to play more than about 3 games in a row. For that all to happen at the same time is big ask, which is why I think they're going to come last in the league. And I mean, their auction. How can I give a team who don't sign openers anything better than an F? I mean, like, it's utterly horrific. This auction was an abomination, and if I could give it less than an F, I would.
Wow. Cool. We're going to take a really quick break. Then we're going to come back, talk about some unsold players. And if you've got a question, stick it in the chat. We'll try and do a handful of those as well. But we want to keep the show, if possible, under 2 hours. So we've got about 14 minutes when we come back to do that.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Cricket Podcast for the finale of the show. We're going to be talking about some unsold players. I've got a big list of them up on the screen, but it's not really sorted in terms of surprise unsold. In fact, the person at the top is KAU Kenzie. I've never even heard of them. So maybe we'll close that in a moment and go back to something else. Ross, I'll go to you first, though. You've already mentioned Prithvi Shaw not selling. Was there anyone else that you were a little bit surprised not to see go?
The Lord, Shardul Thakur.
Yeah.
So I was surprised not to see the Lord go. And then Mayank Yadav, how that person's stock has fallen over the last few years. Yeah, Mayank Yadav, didn't he?
Mayank
Agarwal. Sorry, I've caught a bit of the Jack-itis, so I literally can't speak. From a domestic talent point of view, that was quite surprising. Because if you're going to take a risk, you want to be doing those kind of things, I think. And then I think there was a couple of overseas players. From everyone who's followed us, we have a Discord channel, and Alex, who is on there, put together a mock auction that 10 of us kind of contributed to. And I think there's some players in there, Jack, from an overseas perspective that I was a little bit surprised didn't get picked up. So people like Matthew Short in that space was a little bit surprising. People like Sikandar Raza on Twitter, I think probably not an IPL player at 38, so not that much of a surprise.
Dan, you obviously have a deep and broad knowledge of the player base. I think the thing that really struck me is the number of teams that didn't go for overseas players. So who were you surprised not to see go from that pot?
Definitely, as a couple of people said in the chat, Naveen ul Haq I thought would definitely sell. I'm really, really, really surprised that he didn't get a franchise. I would also say that if you're going down the list, I would be pretty. I think Adam Milne is far better than a lot of overseas bowlers that are at other franchises. I've worked with him for best part of 4 years, and I would 100% say that. Matt Short, I think, is an interesting one. Someone said that he was only 50% available, so I don't know if that was I don't know if that was an issue for him. Atkinson potentially was another one, but at a high base price. Steve Smith at a high base price, I thought might have had a Ponting written all over it, but no. Ben Duckett, I think, would have been a good pickup for the team, but again, high base price. Finn Allen, high base price. Daryl Mitchell, high base price. And I think that those high base prices were a factor for teams in terms of the end of the auction. They were looking for overseas players, and they just sort of tried to find someone that they could afford rather than necessarily the best option. Again, poor planning because they spent too much money on mediocre players early on in the auction.
Finn Allen and Lucknow as an example, right? Immediately a better person in that team.
Or Bairstow at Lucknow as well. Or I mean, like, yeah, exactly. Ben Duckett. Or even Steve Smith. All of them would be just considerably better than what they've got right now. And it makes no sense really whatsoever. On a side note of the base price conversation, look, as you were speaking to an agent about this earlier, and a couple of players as well, and look, in some way, people from outside of county cricket or the UK might not understand why English players put their reserve in at 2 crore, but actually, first of all, they're going to be paying 50% tax on it. Probably they've got agent fees to pay out of that, and they also have to reimburse a proportion of their contract to account their county as well. So, let's say, for example, they get paid 2 crore, they get bought for 2 crore. They might only walk away with £80,000 for a three-month commitment playing the IPL. They could actually earn more playing PSL on that basis, and or a similar amount for half the time. And you say still that's good money. Yeah, it is, but it's a short career and they've got to make the most out of it. So you can understand why, if they're going to put their name into the auction, they're going to put themselves in at a high reserve.
Yeah, I've said this for a while. Like, doesn't apply to every nation, but I think people always used to say about Adil Rashid, like if he didn't put his base in at 2, then he'd get picked up. And it's like, well, he gets £1 million from England, so already you've got to offer him something to kind of take time out of his schedule and potentially risk that. Then you've got everything that Dan just outlined there in terms of taxation agencies, paying back to your county. I think there's a kickback, isn't there, that go to the board as well. So you don't walk away sports-wise, IPL-wise, with as much money as I think people think. And I don't know if a load of players end up PSL. I wonder whether the base prices, whether they'll do something about that from an IPL point of view. Maybe not, probably not. They probably don't really care about the PSL, or whether Adil Rashid turns up. But it does explain why some players do that.
There's an experience thing, I think, as well. Like, quite a lot of the people who actually they've been there and done it as well. I think there's sometimes, if you're an overseas player, I've always wanted to play in the IPL or at least be around it. Once you've done it, actually, they're kind of a bucket list item anyway, and you're a bit less like, I'm not going to get out of bed for anything more than that to go through that again, because I've already got the things in hand, right? So I think there is an element of that too. I also wanted to see Alzari Joseph picked up, because I think he's just a really fun, fast bowler. But I think him kicking off and literally walking off the pitch the other week, probably people were just like, you know what, maybe not worth the hassle, which is really disappointing for someone who's quite exciting.
We had a couple of questions. RK asked, will Cam Green go for 50 crore next year, and will it be to Punjab or RCB? Well, maybe not 50, but I think he could be in line for a little payday, couldn't he, Dan?
I don't think he can earn any more than any player sold for in this mega auction. So
just the 26,
27 or whatever. Yeah. No, he'll probably be one of those 2 franchises though. Unless, I mean, like, maybe Punjab realise what a mistake they made with Shreyas Iyer, and he goes to Punjab. I don't know. I've got no idea, but I don't think he'll go for that. I think he I would say that it would be much more sensible the bidding for Cameron Green next time.
And we had a question, Ross, will this be Fraser McGurk's big year? It's quite a good year last year.
I kind of felt that last year was his big year. The last few games he's played, he's kind of been a bit of a busted flush on that front. So I think now it's around, right, can he be consistent and can he be trusted with this team? I think Delhi should be a good team to work for in that space. And yeah, look, Delhi could be really exciting, or they could be absolutely dreadful. So I'm quite excited to the boom or bust approach they're going with. So yeah.
Cool. I think that probably brings the podcast to a close. Ross, any final words from you?
Well, just thank you to all of our Patreon members. Like, they've made this whole auction for like far more exciting. And the mock auction, Alex, thank you as well. And then for everybody who's followed us on Twitter, I know it's a bit of a cesspit these days on Twitter, so it's quite good to kind of get all of those different parts. And Dan, your coverage and points table was super interesting to kind of read through, and you could really kind of see some of this. Well, even doing the mock auction, Jack, I don't know if you felt this, but you kind of got to learn quite a few lessons around what it must be like at that table. And what was really interesting for me was that some of the decision making is still dreadful. Like the level of professionalism through a league like this, like there's not many organizations who get to reset every 3 years and all of that planning that goes into it. Yet, and the auction approach is absolutely crucial to your success. Yet the prep that goes into it doesn't seem to be the level of prep that it should really be. And obviously we don't get to see what goes on behind the scenes, but there is a load of avoidable mistakes that teams year on year, they're typically the same teams, they fall into those traps. That's a fundamental leadership and management problem at those franchises, and that's something that is really holding some of these teams back. And the other part was I was really, really disappointed by how good the auction room actually looked in Saudi. Like, there was no wedding hotel vibes. Like, it actually looked like they kind of set up to do what they did. Yeah, it would actually look quite cool.
Right, just before we go, final thing that we'll do is a quick prediction who will finish in the playoffs next year. Before we do that, to everybody who's on YouTube right now or listening or whatever, make sure you click like and subscribe. Help us build our listener and viewership base. We've enjoyed reading all the comments as they've come through, and we'll continue to enjoy reading them in the future. We've got lots of Border-Gavaskar Trophy coverage coming up. England are in New Zealand, and then we move into the new year, and eventually we'll get to the IPL itself. Predictions, though, Dan, who's finishing top 4 in the IPL next year?
Right, CSK.
Yep.
Sunrisers.
Yep.
RCB. And either Gujarat or KKR.
Okay, Ross, who are you going with? Ross?
CSK, Mumbai Indians. Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me? I'm here.
Yeah, you just
so CSK, Mumbai Indians, RCB, and then it's a complete shootout for that final space. I think from a batting perspective, Sunrisers are better than the other teams in that space, so that could be the thing that kind of gets them through, but they could also explode and embarrass themselves, so it could also be KKR. So that final shootout is difficult for me, but RCB, Mumbai Indians, CSK, and then those two I mentioned.
I'm going to go for Chennai Super Kings, Mumbai Indians, Gujarat Titans, and Sunrisers Hyderabad. There we are. We'll see how we did when we get there next year.
Also, we should. How many? What also is really funny is the IPL starts in like March next year, so there's so much opportunity for players to get injured in that time frame. So like some of the teams that we're predicting now, like they might have a problem solved by the time the thing rolls around.
They also might have bigger problems.
No,
the ones like the teams like Lucknow. I mean.
Yeah, absolutely true. Thanks very much for listening, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. We'll be back soon enough. Goodbye.